So I'm honoured this week to have one of the most well-known artists in the board game realm into the Design Note studio, and this is Klemenz Franz. Klemens, welcome to the Design Note studio.
Thank you for inviting me.
So my first question, so usually in life we are forced to be modest and nice, but this is where you get to brag. This is where you get to say all of those things you really think about yourself but never say to people in public. So my first question is, when did you know you were good at what you do?
I still don't know, but it's always a sign that you're doing something right when you get another job. So the first job I got in the business was more luck than anything else. But I think the second one and the third one are even more important because they show that you do something right.
So your first job, for those who don't know, your first job was illustrating Agricola, which is crazy, really, when you think about your first board game job being this classic game that, you know, at least hundreds of thousands of people have played. What do you think? You've said that, you know, it's the second job and the third job that reinforce things. What was it that you did on the first job that ensured you would get the second job, do you think?
I think mainly the success of the game. So it was simply noted on every level. Everyone in the scene, in the board game bubble, knew the game, saw the game, played the game, was really excited about it, and they all, or other publishers, respected and noted the amount of work that went into the game. And I think this foundation of showing, okay, I can make a complex game, I can illustrate a game that works on such a high level, was the right foundation to knock on different doors and tell the publishers, here I am, I want to do this, I want to have more jobs in this field. And so I think it was a success. It wasn't really, I don't think it was mainly my part, it was the luck, and then the will to stay in this business. So it was a combination of external and internal motivation and factors that simply laid the foundation from which it was easy is the wrong word, but doing such an important and successful game is simply a door opener on so many levels.
The point is, though, it's not just the game, it's also the art is very instructive in encouraging people to buy a game. You know, people look at covers and it appeals. Now, there's something about your art style that feels like a German Euro game. What is it about your art style, do you think, that fits so perfectly with that genre of game?
I only can summarize what people tell me. It's always hard judging your own work, but what I really often hear is it has some childish taste. It's from a technical perspective, it's far from being perfect. It's full of flaws, of things that do not work, but in the whole, it creates a situation that is somehow inviting for people, that reminds people probably of their own drawings they do. And I think this combination of a friendliness, it's not intimidating in any way, hopefully. So it sometimes takes away the pressure that complex games build in terms of their rules and their mechanisms. So this mixture, I think, is typical for me. But what plays into all this is the fact that I had the chance to not just illustrate Agricola, but other games like Le Havre and Orléans, stuff like that, that are really considered to be great Euro-style games. So I think I had the chance to build a style in in cooperation with great games that many people know. So it's this mixture, hopefully, probably, that defines my style and a little bit what is typical for Euro games, that they do not tend to be too realistic, that they are playful in what they picture and how they picture things, that they do not take themselves too seriously. So all this hopefully creates something that's typical for me. Hmm.
So I was playing Agricola a couple of weeks ago, and I was not just struck by the art, but I was always also struck by what makes, because Agricola can be a very harsh and very stressful game, but there's something about the art that makes it feel more relaxing. And it wasn't just the art itself, but it was also the color palette. The way it sort of, it feels like the countryside, and the colours are very soft and very calming. Do you choose those colours, or are they given to you by, is a colour palette given to you by the publisher? Is that up to you, or is it up to them, I guess, is the question I'm asking.
Well, initially it's up to me, but the publisher always is giving feedback. They can say this is too colorful, the colors are too strong, we need something more reduced in terms of the variety of colors. But mostly it's me. It's what it's how I would illustrate a game that I designed. That's always my approach. If this would be my game, how would I do it for me, just for me? So that's a starting point. And if this matches the expectations of the publisher, and hopefully it does, because they choose the illustrators based on specific reasons. So when they choose me, they hopefully know what I can do and what I cannot do. So it's a dialogue, but in most cases, it starts on my side.
So let's go back then, before you became a board game artist. Why did you get into graphic design and graphic art? Were you one of those kids who would always be doodling on pieces of paper, and art was something that came naturally to you?
Yes, I went to an art school in Austria for sculpturing. I wanted to go there because of graphic design and photography, but I chose a different path for me: sculpturing, 3D modeling, but not on the computer, in with real components. And after that school, I was somehow saturated in terms of art and creativity and people in the art industry all dressed black, wearing glasses, stuff like that. So I did dive into the whole IT bubble of the late 90s and studied in the fields of information technology. But you cannot run away from yourself. So I soon started incorporating things I learned before into what I was studying there, and quickly specialized in the fields of new media, multimedia technology, and found myself there bringing in those creative aspects. And besides studying, I needed to earn some money, and started working for some advertising agencies doing graphic design jobs. So that's a foundation. And the rest was more or less an accident, that I stumbled into this business by participating in an illustration contest from Lookout Games.
And so, when was it that you made the transition from being a graphic artist into a board game graphic artist? Was it straight after Agricola you got loads of work, or did that take some longer time?
It took some time, yes. I was working as an assistant at the university during that time. Besides that, I always worked for advertising agencies doing graphic design, and I started to build up my own customer base. And when Agricola hit, I kept doing jobs in the board game business. And after a couple of years, slowly growing the number of jobs I got, I had the moment there came the moment where I had to decide: do I want to stay at the university as an assistant, or do I want to do this full time? And since I had enough jobs for 2 years, I could make this move. And well, after that, it's slowly the part where I did logo design, corporate design, grew smaller and smaller, and the part where I did board game illustrations and board game graphic design grew more and more. And luckily, now I'm only doing board game stuff. But it was fluid, not a hard transition. It one step after another.
You know, I'm a freelancer, and the stress of being a freelancer, I'm a terrible freelancer too. The stress of being a freelancer is often that, you know, you see the end of a contract and you think, what am I going to do when this contract comes to an end? Mm-hmm. Have you always, since you hit that transition point, have you always pretty much had sort of a 2-year window where you know what you're doing?
Yes, because I'm in the lucky, very, very lucky situation that my main customer is Lookout Games. Mm. So I'm doing there all, together with my wife, all the graphic design, layout for rule books, print preparation stuff. And therefore I know I get money every month. Without Lookout, I probably wouldn't be in this situation. It's really luxury to have such a big customer, a big partner that is willing to go on this journey together with you. And I think both sides did get out a lot of this friendship, I have to say. So that's my luxury. But at one point, I think it would have worked without Lookout as well, but not without giving away more sleep and a more peaceful sleep that I have now.
So, can you give us an overview of your process of illustrating a game from you know, the first email where, you know, they write to you and say, this is the game we're doing, up until the point where you deliver the files to the printer? What is that process?
The process is always a different one. It depends on so many different aspects, like who is the publisher, who is the editor, who is the designer, how much do they prepare the theme, the direction they want to go to. But in most cases, they contact me, they send me a prototype, or they play with me the prototype if we have the chance to meet. And then I start, in most cases, working on one core aspect, core element, core component of the game that I think is central to the whole other components that are arranged around this. So if it's a card-driven game, we might start with designing the cards, the icons. And if we have one of those elements, the rest is coming together like a puzzle in layers. Each layer is fitting around the next one, but the centerpiece is the one that gives the direction to every other component. So that's what I really like to do. Concentrate on one thing and then do the rest. It means, of course, that later in the process, we might have to get back to this central component, because things around here do affect what's happening in the middle. So it's a back and forth, but I start with one component. And then we slowly build everything up. And then there is a moment where we have to say, okay, now let's produce the print data for the printer and send it away. And that's always a magical moment. It's a combination of joy and fear, because when you hit the send button, you know now it's going to the printer and they are looking at it, of course. But it's crazy to give this baby, this child that you worked on so long, away to someone else who is bringing it to physical life. And that's really strange. And it's always even more thrilling to open the box the first time to see if everything has worked like it should, and to see how many mistakes you've made this time.
So how do you get a handle on kind of what needs to go in the box, what individual tokens? Do you play the prototypes before you illustrate the games?
If possible, yes. Especially if we're talking about more complex games or games that heavily rely on their components, which have a twist in the components, so the components have to work. But it's always good playing the game on the table, not virtually, because when we're sitting around the table, everyone is viewing the game from a different perspective. I'm designing the game north, south, but I always have to keep in mind people are sitting around the table. They're seeing the game board from different angles. They put pieces on the board from different angles. So it's always better to get the feeling for the real product with a real physical prototype. So if possible, yes, the more complex the game, the eager I am to play it. For simpler games, it's not always necessary, because if you have a clear vision of what's going on the board, then it's not a problem. And if you can rely on the editor and the part on the publisher, that they know the game very well. You have to trust them. If they say, please reconsider this or that, because we know it won't work, like cards holding in your hand. Try to put the icons on both in both corners, and they say, no, we don't need this because we have the experience that it's working differently. Always trust them, because they know the game the best. They really dive into the game, into the mechanism. So that's really important as well, and listening to them, and sometimes doing things that you wouldn't believe that they would work. But one experience I made is that every time you open up to ideas, even though it might be painful sometimes, the end result is always better. Every time it was always a better game, a better end result, when everyone contributed and everyone was open to the ideas and to the feedback of others.
So you've illustrated a lot of games, and a lot of games, and I think of Agricola now, but also Caverna, also Orleans. They have expansions, and is getting the call to jump back on the Agricola or Orleans horse, does that make the job of doing the art for that expansion easier because you already have assets in place? Or do you have to go back from scratch again?
No, it's much easier than starting from scratch, because, as you mentioned, you can build on the things you have. You can reuse stuff, of course. The tricky thing is more that if there's a long time between the base game and the expansion, it might be hard getting back into the flow and into the feeling of the game. And there is the trap of an expansion looking different than the base game. So that's the main challenge when doing expansions, getting back into the mood you had when you did the base game.
And so, I'm the fact that we're able to have this conversation over the internet is frankly amazing to me, because I can't use computers. So the fact that I've got this to work is a constant surprise to me. But is it possible as a modern graphic artist now not to be someone who is able to manipulate software and quite advanced software, things like graphic programs and stuff?
I think there are still some illustrators out there who do everything on paper with pencil, which is wonderful and brilliant, and you feel it, and you really get the texture of the material they use, and I do love that. But for me, no. I'm relying heavily on all this digital equipment because the whole process of how games are designed did change over the last 20 years. Uh, Complex games like Agricola, um, I think they wouldn't be possible without the way we communicate now, without doing a quick scribble, a quick layout of how things might look, how different action fields are arranged on the game board, sending them to the designer, to the publisher, getting feedback, rearranging things. This iterative design process is really important for complex games because every millimeter counts. If I put this field a little bit to the left, it might affect the whole flow of the game, the whole experience of how people see the games and see the information. So especially complex games, complex Euro games, I think wouldn't be possible without um, digital tools like InDesign, Photoshop,
Mm.
Illustrator, whatever. But even more without the way of communication, of quick communication, using management and communication tools that help you develop the game. For Agricola, we had a simple board where we had one thread for every single card, and it was necessary because it was a design where text was changed and layout was changed, and we had to go back to every single card. And without some form of organization, this wouldn't have been possible.
You're most well known in the industry for your relationship with Uwe Rosenberg, illustrating Uwe Rosenberg games, and so many of his games, especially from that sort of from Agricola onwards, are now considered classics within the industry. How good does it feel to know that the games you've illustrated are so well loved by the gaming public?
It still is amazing. It's surreal. Um, it's the most joy I take out of this is because I really do love to play these games, and that's the pure luxury in my life that I had the chance to illustrate so many games that I love. Not because I illustrated them, but because they are great games, and that's really sometimes it's a little bit intimidating, uh, but it's really it's quite fulfilling, to be honest. And the fact is that I was a board gamer before I started illustrating board games gives me this perspective on things. So I'm grateful. I'm humble. I'm still wondering how this all turned out like it turned out.
And to what degree do you think you're responsible for players' reactions to games? To what extent? And if you don't want to answer that necessarily, I'll broaden it a bit. To what extent do you think the art in a game contributes to players being immersed within the game?
Okay, one step after another. First, great illustrations, great graphics design cannot make a good game out of a bad game. So the game has to be good. That's the base. But it can help elevating the experience on different levels. There's a level of theme where you think of great illustrations, colorful, inviting, evoking illustrations that pull you right into the theme and into the game. That's one part. Then there's another part where you say the way I designed everything in terms of layout, of usability, of user experience enables players to dive into these great mechanisms without thinking too much of how I have to put things on the board, how these different procedures and rules have to be executed. So this is a door opener, and I think it's even more important than the illustrations. If you have this graphic design that makes it possible for players to dive into the game, that's the first step. Then you can think of the illustrations that create a theme that's pulling them into the game even more. So this step by step creates hopefully a visual environment that is open, and that's easy to dive into. So going back to my illustrations, that's always hard to answer, but I get a lot of feedback from people saying that they really love and like the way I illustrate things, that they have special memories, that they have a special connection, probably because Agricola was their entry point to board gaming, and they've played hundreds of games. So there is no other way than my illustrations being imprinted in the visual database. So I get positive feedback. I get negative feedback as well. That's part of the job. That's always something you have to live with. I'm always sad if someone actively dislikes what I do, because then I have really missed my goal. And my goal is to open the games to players. And if someone is hindered in entering the game because of my illustrations, then I'm really sorry for that. That's something that doesn't feel too good, because if it's a good game and they do not play it because of the illustrations, then I might have missed my goal. But I get positive feedback. I get a lot of requests doing stuff like invitations for marriage, for birthday, stuff like that. So there is positive feedback, there's negative feedback, but there is feedback. So people are actively seeing what I do.
And so whenever I speak to parents, I'm not a parent myself, but I speak to parents and they say, oh, no, we don't have a favourite child. And I'm sure they're lying to me.
Yes, they are.
Because I'm sure it's impossible. And I know you shouldn't say that you have a favourite child, but do you have one game project above all others that you're particularly proud of?
I have many, out of many different reasons. But one that always comes back is Port Royal, the card game, which is now out in a big box with brilliant new illustrations, not done by me, but really great package. But I'm proud of the game because I did it more or less on my own within 1 week. It was a charity project by the Spieleakademie in Vienna, and Alexander Pfister sponsored the game. I sponsored my work, and what was earned in terms of money was put to people in need. So it was a good project, and I had more or less I was completely free in doing the game how I wanted it to look like and play like. And I'm really happy how it turned out, especially in terms of how the iconography works. That's more or less the same in the new edition. And the overall look and feel I like as well, besides the fact that it's completely whitewashed. So all the people in the game, even though it plays in the Caribbean area, whitewashed, which mainly happened because I did it in 1 week. And back then I wasn't really aware of this topic. And that's one thing I'm really proud of. And on the other hand, I already apologized for doing it the way I did it in this aspect. But it was really great doing such a successful game in 1 week and seeing, okay, I can do that.
So I've got 2 more questions for you. So you're in Essen, and you go to the pub in the evening, and you come back from the loo, and you hear a table of gamers, and you hear your name mentioned. So you go into the corner and you listen to what they're saying. What do you hope they're saying about you?
Uh, I don't know. Hopefully, nothing mean, hurtful. There's always this. I can say I don't like things, but it always depends on how you say it. Do you try to insult someone, or do you articulate critique in a mannered way? So that's important. Besides that, uh, I would like to hear and love to hear that they enjoy playing the game. Um, if they say it's part of part is because of the graphic design, that's nice. But most important, if they enjoy the game, then that's what I would like to see and hear, and that's what I hear and see on fairs, and that's the biggest benefit you get when working in this industry, seeing people playing and enjoying the games you worked on. So I cannot really tell what I want to hear them say about me, uh, but I know what I want them to say about the game.
So, last question then. Why is gaming good?
Oh my, how long do we have? Many reasons. It's for me, just why is it good for me? And even though I sit in front of the computer and work on games for 8 to 12 hours a day, I still enjoy playing them when I have the time. Um, for me, it is a very specific form of entertainment that is only, in most cases, solo games excluded, that is only possible if people sit around the table and they agree on um, the rules, and then they create something unique, something uh, together. They create images in their head. I always tend to see board games closer related to books than to video games, because the pictures are created in our heads, and it's that's always the feeling, the pictures, the emotions I get out of games uh, are really special because they are created in this um, collaborative process of us playing together, treating each other in a good way, doing probably mean things, but within the game system. So this creation of images in your head, that's mostly what I really love about games. That I can dive into this world that is created in a dialogue between people, components, and my own head, and it's always new, it's always unique, it's always it's never the same. Uh, like in video games, you have visuals that are predefined, you have sound that is predefined, but here you move one piece on the game board to another spot, and for one person this might be okay, I move this here, but others see someone traveling there, others see a train driving there, and they get different images based on their own experience, on things they saw, things they read. So it's so highly individual, and that's fascinating. And that's always for me when I sit on the table playing a game, it's always like, what will happen in my head, what will happen in the head of the other players, and that's the magic of the medium for me.
Brilliant. Well, Klemenz Franz, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.